Welcome back. Today, we're deconstructing a really provocative essay, The Looming Shadow of Islamic Expansionism in India. We're going to break down the arguments presented, looking directly at the claims and the reasoning the author uses to support them. Wow. So, right off the bat, the source text hits you with this really stark claim. It sets the tone immediately, one of an urgent internal crisis. So, throughout this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how the author arrives at this conclusion. All right, let's dive in. So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the main idea, the central thesis. Then we'll look at the historical backstory the author provides, zero in on a specific law that's crucial to the argument, explore what the essay calls a multi-front war, and finally, get to the author's big warning at the end.
Okay, so first up, what is the fundamental claim here? What's the core argument that this entire essay is built around?
Well, the author's main point is pretty direct. They're arguing that there's a sustained strategic effort underway to transform India into an Islamic state. You really have to keep this central idea in mind, because it's the lens through which every other point in the essay is presented.
So how does the author even begin to build this argument? Well, this isn't presented as some new development. Instead, the whole thesis is grounded in a very specific reading of history, which is seen as one long, continuous struggle.
And you can see that right here. The source lays out this timeline where every major historical event is like a chapter in a single story. So according to the author, the British arriving, that's framed as an event that actually interrupted the process of Islamization. Then partition in 1947? The essay claims this wasn't a final settlement, but more of a strategic move to continue the effort from inside India's borders, an effort the text calls Ghazwa-i-Hind, which it translates to mean the conquest of India.
The text then zooms in on a bunch of political and legal decisions made right after 1947. Now, the key here is that the author doesn't see these as separate, isolated policies. They're framed as deliberate steps by leaders like Nehru and Gandhi, things like the creation of the Waqf Board Act, the Muslim Personal Law Board. It's all presented as part of a larger strategy to, in the author's view, empower Muslim interests and push that long-term goal forward. Now, the essay really focuses in on one specific piece of legislation. It's presented as the primary legal tool in this whole alleged campaign, the Waqf Board Act.
So according to this essay, the Waqf Board isn't just some administrative body. It's described as this incredibly powerful instrument for basically land acquisition. The language is pretty striking. The author claims it has more power to capture land legally than historical invaders had with armies and warfare. And just look at the powers the author claims it has. The text portrays the board as operating almost outside the normal legal system. It can supposedly claim any land, do it with legal immunity, and just keep expanding what the author calls its land empire. And to make this point feel real, the author gives a specific example. The essay brings up a case in Tamil Nadu, where, reportedly, an ancient temple and even an entire village's land were claimed by the board. The author then uses this one instance to make this massive, dramatic conclusion about the potential scope of the board's power. All right, so now the argument pivots. We've gone through the history and the legal framework, but now the essay shifts to what it calls a modern multi-front campaign, basically detailing the tactics allegedly being used today to reach that ultimate goal. And the source presents these not as random, isolated events, but as 4 coordinated steps in a bigger strategy. It alleges tactics ranging from what it calls love jihad, a controversial term for a supposed conspiracy to convert women through marriage, all the way to things like violence and even economic sabotage. The language is very militaristic, almost like describing an army taking up strategic positions to weaken the country from the inside. To add some weight to this, the author highlights specific regions where this strategy has allegedly had the biggest demographic impact. The descriptions are designed to be shocking, using phrases like Hinduless or making direct comparisons to neighboring countries. It's all meant to create a powerful sense of urgency and crisis. So, this all brings us to the author's big conclusion. After laying out the history, the legal tools, and the modern tactics, the focus suddenly turns inward to identify who the author believes is truly responsible for all this. And here's the crucial point. The source argues that all these strategies it's been describing are only effective because they're being enabled by people within India's own political and social systems. This brings us full circle, right back to that quote we saw at the very beginning of this explainer. The text then identifies several distinct internal groups it holds responsible. It points a finger at political parties that it says are just chasing votes, opposition members who block reforms to the Waqf Board Act, and even, interestingly, people within the Hindu nationalist movement itself, who the author accuses of weakening their own side with criticism. And the entire essay ends on this question. It's not just a summary, it's a direct call to action aimed at Sanatanis, a term for followers of Hinduism. The author frames the whole situation as an urgent, existential crisis, leaving the reader with this one final thought: that unconditional unity is the only solution to the multifaceted threat we've just deconstructed.